Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mr. English Podcast. I'm Emma, and I want to tell you about one specific evening, years ago now, where I knew every single word I needed, and I still couldn't speak properly. Not a vague memory. One dinner, one table, I can still picture exactly where I was sitting.
Hey everyone, I'm James, and I want to say up front, I didn't know Emma yet when this happened. She told me this story a long time after we met, and it genuinely changed how I think about what fluency actually is.
This wasn't a vocabulary test. I'd studied for years. I could have passed a written exam on everything that was discussed at that table, and I still sat there again and again, unable to get a clean sentence out.
If you've ever known the words and still felt your mouth refuse to cooperate, today's episode is going to walk through exactly why, layer by layer, because it's rarely just one reason.
Let me take you back to that table.
Welcome, wherever you're listening from. This is Mr. English Podcast. Today is one story, told properly, with the real mistakes left in, because the mistakes are actually where the lesson lives.
It was a dinner with my partner's family. First time meeting most of them properly. And it started with something so small, I didn't even notice it happening. For a long time afterwards, I told myself the story simply. I thought I just didn't know enough words that night. That was my explanation for years. Not enough vocabulary, not enough preparation.
But that's not actually true, is it?
No. And here's the thing that makes this story worth telling. I'd studied English for over a decade by that point. I could read novels, I understood the news, I had genuinely advanced vocabulary. So I didn't know the words was a comfortable explanation. But it was wrong from the very first minute of sitting down at that table.
Why do you think that was the explanation you reached for first, though?
Because it's the kindest one. I don't know enough is fixable, distant, almost academic. It doesn't ask anything uncomfortable about how my brain was actually working in that moment. The real explanations were harder to look at.
So what actually happened at the table?
Early on, someone asked me something completely ordinary. Do you think it'll rain later? And I answered, it depends of the weather.
Depends of?
Depends of the weather, yes.
It depends on the weather. Depend always takes on, never of. It depends on you. It depends on the traffic. The of version is a really common mistake because in a lot of languages, the equivalent word actually does use something closer to of, so your brain reaches for the wrong preposition automatically under pressure.
It depends on the weather. And that was the first small crack. Not because anyone reacted, nobody even noticed, but because I noticed. I heard the wrong word land in my own mouth in real time, in front of people I was trying to make a good impression on.
So that's one mistake, early on. What happened next?
This is where it gets interesting, because I started noticing something physical, not just linguistic. Someone asked me directly, "So how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" Completely normal dinner question. And I knew the answer instantly. Of course I did. I've known my own age my whole life. But the answer arrived in my head in my first language first. Not in English. In my first language. Instantly. Automatically. And only after that did I have to actually build the English sentence from it. Live. While 6 people waited for an answer to a question that should take less than 2 seconds.
What did you actually say?
I have 28 years.
I have 28 years?
I have 28 years. Yes, said completely confidently, like it was obviously correct.
In English, we don't have years the way you have a possession. We are an age. I am 28. I'm 28 years old. Not I have 28 years. That phrasing comes directly from languages where age is something you have rather than something you are. It's one of the most common direct translation mistakes there is because the logic feels completely natural. You're just moving the structure from one language into another without realizing the structure itself doesn't transfer.
I'm 28. 2 words simpler than what I actually said. And that's what I mean about feeling it physically. There was a real, measurable gap between knowing the fact and producing the English sentence about the fact. I could feel the table's attention sitting in that gap while I built the sentence in real time.
That gap, that's the thing almost nobody explains properly. It's not that you don't know English, it's that you're running 2 systems at once, translating live. And translation takes time that conversation doesn't give you.
And the more it happened that night, the more aware of the gap I became, which, if anything, made it slightly worse each time, not better. Someone mentioned the food, and his mother explained how she'd made it, and I wanted to say something warm back. I said, "She explained me the recipe."
Explained me?
She explained me the recipe, yes, meaning she explained the recipe to me.
Explain needs to before the person. She explained the recipe to me, not explained me the recipe. It feels like it should work the same way as a verb like tell. You tell someone something, but explain doesn't follow that same pattern. She explained it to me. He explained the rules to us. Always to, never the person placed directly after the verb.
She explained the recipe to me. Such a small fix, and at the time I didn't even register I'd said it wrong. James only pointed it out to me years later, when I told him the whole story properly for the first time.
Friends, has this ever happened to you? Not forgetting a word, but knowing the answer completely, and still feeling that lag between the thought and the sentence? That lag is the real subject of today's episode, not vocabulary at all.
As the dinner went on, something else started happening. And this one is harder to admit. I started having full sentences ready in my head, properly constructed, mostly correct, and not saying them.
Why not? If you had them ready.
Because in that specific room, with those specific people, on that specific evening, being wrong out loud felt louder than being quiet. It was the first time meeting most of his family. I desperately wanted to seem capable, intelligent, worth getting to know. And a visible grammar mistake felt in that moment like it would undo all of that instantly.
So what did you do instead?
I started editing my own sentences down before they left my mouth. Someone shared an opinion about something, I don't even remember what now, and I actually agreed completely. I had a real, slightly detailed response ready, but instead I just said, I am agree with that.
I am agree?
I am agree with that, yes. And I said it small, quickly, almost hoping nobody would examine it too closely.
Agree is a verb on its own. It doesn't need am in front of it. I agree, not I am agree. The word agree already does the job a verb does. Adding am treats it like an adjective, the way you'd say I am happy. But agree isn't an adjective. I agree. She agrees. We agree. No am, no is, no are in front of it, ever.
I agree with that. 4 syllables shorter than what I actually built first in my head, and then shrank down out of fear. That's the part that still sits with me looking back. The real sentence I had ready was better than the safe one I actually said. Fear didn't make me silent, it made me smaller.
That's such an important distinction. People assume the problem is freezing completely. Often it's not. It's quietly downgrading a perfectly good sentence into something flatter and safer, specifically to reduce the chance of being visibly wrong.
And it compounds across an entire evening. By the time divert came around, I was tired. Genuinely, physically tired, in a way that had nothing to do with the actual conversation topics, which were easy. Someone asked if I was enjoying myself, and almost without thinking, I said, I am boring tonight.
I am boring?
I meant bored. I am bored tonight. Well, not even that really. I meant something more like tired or worn out, but bored was the closest word that arrived in time.
Boring describes something that causes boredom. A boring film, a boring meeting. Bored describes how you feel because of something boring. I am boring means people find you dull. I am bored means you find the situation dull. One letter's difference in the ending, but it completely flips who the sentence is actually about. And at a dinner with people you're trying to impress, that's a fairly significant flip.
I was mortified the second it left my mouth. Even though, again, nobody reacted. I think I was the only person at that table who heard everything I said as loudly as I did. Friends, here's your first comment challenge. Have you ever shrunk a sentence down out of fear, the way Emma did with I agree? Not forgotten it, deliberately made it smaller and safer. Tell us about it in the comments. You're in much better company than you think.
So, when you told me this story properly, years later, I noticed something underneath all of it that I don't think you'd named yourself yet.
Go on.
You'd been treating speaking like writing. Composing a sentence fully in your head, checking it for correctness, and only then delivering it. The way you'd write an essay, read it back, fix it, and submit it. But conversation doesn't give you a draft stage. Nobody at that table was going to wait while you silently edited.
That's exactly it. And I didn't see it for years. I was rehearsing internally before every sentence, trying to get it right before it existed out loud. Writing has time for that. Speaking genuinely doesn't.
And here's the thing that actually changes this. It's not about knowing more grammar so the rehearsal goes faster. The fix is building a completely different muscle. The muscle that says the first reasonable sentence lets it be slightly imperfect and keeps the conversation moving, instead of holding the conversation hostage while you search for the perfect version.
One more thing happened that night that shows this perfectly. Near the end, someone asked what we'd all been chatting about earlier, and I said, "We was talking about the garden."
We was?
We was talking about the garden, yes.
We were? Subject-verb agreement just collapses under pressure sometimes, even for things you know perfectly well in calmer moments. We were, they were, you were. Was is only for I, he, she, it. By that point in the evening, you were tired, you'd been rehearsing and editing all night, and the part of your brain managing basic agreement simply ran out of room to check itself.
We were talking about the garden. And that mistake, more than any of the others, is the one that actually proves the diagnosis. It wasn't a vocabulary gap. I'd known were my entire English learning life. It was exhaustion from constantly rehearsing instead of reacting. And exhausted brains drop the things they know best first, not the things they're shakiest on.
A short exercise, if any of tonight's 6 mistakes felt familiar.
Step 1. Say each corrected sentence out loud, slowly, on its own. I agree. It depends on the weather. I'm 28. She explained the recipe to me. I'm bored. We were talking about the garden.
Step 2, and this is the actual exercise, not just the correction. Pick one ordinary question someone might ask you this week. How old are you? What do you do? What were you talking about? Say your answer out loud immediately, without rehearsing it silently first. Let the first reasonable version come out, even if it's not perfect.
That's the muscle. Not no more words. React first. Polish later, if at all. The version you say at normal speed, slightly imperfect, beats the perfect version you never say.
Friends, second comment challenge. Tell us one ordinary question you're going to answer this week without rehearsing the sentence first. Just say the first reasonable thing. We want to know what you chose.
So, vocabulary was never actually the problem at that dinner. It was 4 things stacked on top of each other. The translation lag, felt physically in real time while people waited. The fear of a visible mistake, which didn't make Emma silent, it made her sentences smaller and safer than they needed to be. And underneath both of those, the real diagnosis. Treating speaking like writing, rehearsing a perfect draft instead of reacting with an honest first attempt.
I know the words. I knew them that night too. Know the words was never actually the missing piece. The missing piece was giving myself permission to react instead of rehearse. To let "we were" arrive slightly late and slightly imperfect, rather than not arrive at all because I was still polishing it in my head.
If you've ever sat in a conversation knowing every word you needed and still felt your mouth refuse to cooperate, it's very likely not your vocabulary either. It's some combination of the lag, the fear, and the rehearsal habit. Naming which combination is yours is the actual first step, more than any list of tips ever could be.
If today's episode meant something to you, please give it a like. It means a great deal to us. Share it with someone who has ever said, "I know the words, I just can't speak." Because tonight's story is very specifically for them. Subscribe to Mr. English Podcast for a new episode every week. And tell us in the comments which layer, the lag, the fear, or the rehearsal habit, felt most like your own story tonight.
React first. Polish later, if at all. See you next time on Mr. English Podcast.